All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's the Tuesday night hangout with the FOMO squad, and we have a very special guest tonight. Joining us is comic book creator, writer, artist, yes, even letterer. It's Zander Cannon. He's got a new book out from Image, and we're really excited to have you, Zander. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's awesome. I'm really excited. Yeah. I heard that it was strongly encouraged to drink White Claws. Is that right?
Yep. Claws out.
Oh,
All right. Well, unfortunately, I don't have any White Claws, so
It happens.
I brought my Smirnoff Ice Blue
that's pretty
Raspberry
close. That's pretty
Lemonade.
darn close.
I
Yeah.
think
Really
it's
close.
pretty darn close.
I don't think-
I don't know what this tastes like. This was left in our house after a party, maybe 4 years ago.
Who would believe that?
No.
So if I drop dead during this stream, you
Yeah.
know what happened.
It's just barrel aged. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
in this oak barrel. Yeah.
Well, we've already got a lot of people chatting it up in here, so let's say hey to the folks who have joined us today. So there's Kay Munin, thanks for being
Hey.
here. My brother-in-law, Frank Lloyd Wrong,
Frankie.
Eric Casagrande, the Large
Eric.
House. Dope, don't know why he's in here.
Kick him
What
out.
about Side Quest
Kick him out too.
or Eric T. Huffman? I know those
Who's
guys.
that guy?
I know those guys. Matt from Impressed. Peter, Faulty Memory Comics. Thanks for being here. First Tuesday. Oh, I know who that is. Peter, thanks, man. He did make it. Michael, just Michael. Thanks for being here. JX. Well, Matt was having a great show tonight. Chonko.
What's up, Chonko?
Chanko.
Big Nasty Comics.
Big.
Robbie Josephs. Hey, JSS Brooklyn. Thanks for being
All right.
here, man. Doing the Blue Wrench. Steven, Collecto 6. I think I got everybody. All right. Well, I'm just going to go around the horn here real quick because I didn't introduce everybody. I got so excited to have a guest. So Xander's there in the middle. We've got Hagen from Lettuce Comics, Dope from Dope Comics, and Eric from Side Quest Comics. And I know that I have a lot of questions that I wanted to ask or talk about things with you. But before we start, Xander, is there anything you'd like people to know about you as a comic book creator or as a person or anything that's going on right now that you want to lead with?
Let's see. Well, I've been a comic book artist and writer for over 30 years. I've worked for basically every major company and a bunch of book publishers as well. I did the Game Informer April Fools covers for about 16 years.
That's cool.
And I can ride a unicycle. That's a piece of trivia about me. Yeah.
But you're definitely dedicated. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not an easy skill.
Yeah, I was sure dedicated when I was like 12, and I was like, you know what, this is gonna impress the ladies. And it did. No,
Really?
can
I
you
would have thought
believe
that
it?
would have. I can't. I would have thought that would have done it.
Yeah,
You said 30 years, so you
Yeah.
must have started young.
young. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I did. I started when I was 20 years old, so it's actually been 32 years. And I was, I think that the key here is that it was 1993, and so they were throwing money at comics for the first time in decades, and so all the hottest artists were like really young, maybe a couple of years older than I was. So like Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane and all those guys were like, I think still in their 20s probably, or very young. And so, and I was sending a bunch of stuff around when I was, in college, and I sent it to the people who did the Tick, so New England Comics Press, and so nothing had come out except for the Tick TV show, and then not the Tick TV show, just the comic, and then a couple of spin-offs. And so this was the third spin-off after Paul the Samurai and the Man-Eating Cow. They did the Chainsaw Vigilante, and I did 3 issues of that. And it's a mixed bag, but it was really nice to be able to sort of have real comics that were really published that you could then just mail out to mail your comps out to people and say, hey, you know what, I did this. Here's what I'd like to do for you, etc. And I was pretty loosey goosey about it, but yeah.
So I told you it's one of my prized possessions. Is
That's right.
I have all 3 issues, and
Wow.
I bought them off the rack. I was
Wow.
a dedicated Tick collector, man.
Wow.
And Tick was not coming out. Like
No, yeah, for sure.
12 came out and 13 was just perpetually never coming out, but all the little mini series and things were. So yeah, so I was really excited because I loved the character too.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I thought it was I reread this 2 days ago. I reread all 3 issues.
Yeah.
It still holds up for a 90s.
Yeah, it's got its
independent
moments,
book,
but
Please make yourself
look at
big.
that guy!
Please
Wow,
make yourself big
what
for
a
that.
baby!
yeah.
Oh, look at him!
Look at
Wow.
that. They did a little character bio of you in the back.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what is it talking about? It's talking about my mini comic. It's talking about like working with the Denver Center Theater Company's Young Playwrights Workshop. Come on,
Yeah.
like that's a short resume. That is a short resume.
You
talks you
look
up.
like you were in an absolutely killer improv group, though.
Absolutely,
My God.
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, as I was reading and saw that, I snapped a picture of it. I was like, man, do you still have copies of this?
Oh, yeah, I've got a couple. Yeah, it's. I mean, they're not moving. Like, so it's nice to have them. I mean, like that first issue. Supposedly, lore is that that was the first and possibly only black and white comic with a chrome cover. Chrome cover, which I think is such a baseball stats type of.
I was
type of
opening
thing.
my mouth to say a baseball stat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that what we do, just not with baseball?
Right.
The thing I got out of that article that I liked, it says when you were 13 years old, you self-published a mini comic named The Ninja Garbage Man.
Ninja Garbage Man, because it was
That's
1986. And
bring
everything
that back.
happened.
That's something we would all read. Bring that back.
We would read Ninja Garbage Man. We really
Totally.
would.
That's
Hold
the
on,
kind
one
of
second.
stuff.
I'll grab it for you.
Oh,
We still have copies of this too, so it's yeah, like I said, it's a mixed bag. Yeah, so it's probably, I don't know if this is reversed for you, but it is for me. Yeah, so it's there, Ninja
Nope,
Garbage Man.
we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, 25 cents. I think,
Wow.
and I did 5 issues of it. 3. And then I did like a little mini comic. I mean, I was just ripping off Matt Fizel, the guy who did Cynical Man. He's from Detroit area.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I was selling them to my friends. I was having a great time.
We would all bought that. We'd have loved that.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
now are
Way
those
stuff
are those first printings?
Yeah, their first printings, all right. Yeah, there wasn't much call for a second printing on my 25-cent mini comics. But yeah, so that was really. I mean, that was a fun thing to do in middle school when
Yeah.
it's
I used to do that, but they were on quizzes and tests and stuff, and I would get in trouble for that. So
Right.
Yeah, I remember there was figuring out how to do the pagination so that I could photocopy it on on both sides of a piece of paper and cut it and staple it. That was a really kind of interesting. That made me feel like, ooh, this is
That's
real
high
comics,
tech.
And so I kind of, it's like you kind of felt like, oh, this is all of a sudden I could do this and I could make 25 copies and I don't have to be there when people read them because I don't need it back. That was such a cool thing for me to sort of feel like, oh, this is real comics is far away, but this is a step beyond letting people look at my sketchbook.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I really like that. I mean, I still think about that the afternoon where I was figuring out which pens I was going to use, going to the store and figuring that stuff out. That's a core memory that's sort of imprinted on me. The very beginning of my comics career.
That's cool.
That's really funny because I have one of my questions that I have written down is, do you have a comic core memory? Now, was that the first comic core memory that you had, or was there
that was
something
when
that
I
came
started
before
making them. Of course, there were
Yeah.
a bunch of core memories of reading comics. I think so. I did a podcast just a couple weeks ago about Ralph Snart. I don't know if you guys ever read that comic. Yeah.
Yeah, I know who it is.
Yeah. So
Not read much.
Yeah, I mean there were a zillion issues of it, but I mean I read that that and an issue of like I think it was issue 12 of Flaming Carrot comics. Like that was I think I had those when we went on vacation or something like that. So you know like when you're on a road trip or when you're somewhere and like you're bored and you've only got 3 or 4 comics, you read them 100,000 times. Yeah, that was a big one for me. I mean, I went back and read that comic. I'm like, this comic doesn't make a damn bit of sense, but I loved it. I still love it, but it was just like I was inside it. There we go. All right, yeah, we got some snark heads out here. That's great, Ken. Hey, Ken, that's great. Yeah. Oh, and
oh my God.
Yeah, Ken Meyer Jr. Actually, that is another core thing because Ken did a book called Clint, the Hamster Returns, I think it was, and it was an adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters. The one step away from Ninja Turtles, and then they did a 2-issue series that was like kind of a Dark Knight riff.
Yeah.
But it was Ken and Mike Dringenberg did the art, and it was those two did the art, and Clint Hamster Triumphant. Sorry.
Very cool.
And yeah, that was a core memory, and I have 1 page of original artwork from that, which Ken gave me.
Wow,
like
cool.
30 years ago when I stayed at his house for San Diego Comic-Con.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was and he as he said earlier that I pulled his daughter around in a wagon at San Diego Comic-Con, and I think she's like 33 years old or something like that.
Yeah. That's where we're at now. Anybody want to jump in? Dope, you got a question?
Yeah, I found the whole art, writing, lettering, everything you did all in one very fascinating. And I know a couple of us have played instruments and been in bands, and I know Eric's an artist. How do you know whenever the project is finished? Because I would keep on like, sooner you just got to, how do you know when you're finished with a project or with a comic?
I didn't used to know, and now I know. Like it was like back when I was doing stuff like with especially when I was working with pen, like a kind of crosshatchy stuff on a big sheet of paper. It's like there was always a little bit of noodling to be done. Whereas because you kind of you don't really step back very far, but I do things digitally now, and I think that sometimes it's easier to tell. And I mean, with experience too, but like it's sometimes easier to tell with digital stuff because you're like, yeah, I mean when I zoom it out to the right size for the comic book, I'm like, yeah, that's done, And I also have a particular art style that is basically like I did the outlines, and then I do a certain density of details, and I feel like it's very easy, at least for me, to perceive like, the detail level is acceptable, and we can move on to the next page. It's like it feels like it doesn't always feel like, oh God, I gotta let this go because deadlines are looming. There's that a little bit, but it's usually more like, nope, I got it. Like the density of artwork has been reached. So. Yeah, I am so grateful to have now have that, ability to sort of see that, because it's like, oh my gosh, it was really hard, back when I was in my 20s and being like, oh well, it could be better, it could be nicer, this could be more polished, so to speak.
You've had 30 years that you've honed this into, you're more confident because you got a craft now.
But I think that there was an inflection point about halfway through that where like I was getting better and better and better and better and more detailed, and my art was getting slower and slower and slower and slower. And so what I needed to do, and this is with this book called Heck, which I don't know if you guys have seen, but there was a book called Heck that I did. I published it in 2013, and that was one where I was like, I'm too slow. I will never get all this stuff done. I have all these ideas in my head that I'll never get out because I'm too fussy. And so I did this book. I did this project where I said, all right, some friends and I were like, all right, we're going to get together one Saturday a month. Is that what it was? Yeah, one Saturday a month, where we're going to sit down and for 12 hours, we're going to do a 12-page chapter in our book. And so we just sat down and we just knocked out a page an hour, and it was crazy. Like, it was crazy fast. And it was really interesting because it's like, with your ADHD brain, you like all of a sudden, like that flywheel in there starts spinning so fast, thinking really fast, and you're like, it's like you're in the zone. And you think to yourself, oh, this is terrible, but I'll fix it later. And then you come back to it later, you're like, it's fine. It's totally fine. I could fix these two obvious problems and everything else is totally fine, because, and I think that was the moment that I kind of switched over in my brain where I was like, comics doesn't have to get better and better and better. It just has to be better and better comics. And so it can be more fun, even if the art doesn't get any more sophisticated. You could just sort of like, you can find new stuff to do in the color, or you can find new stuff to do in the writing, or you can find new stuff to do in the storytelling, or, all that stuff.
Very cool. There's a question here. Did you ever have any work that felt more like a job?
Yeah, plenty. And I don't want to like call anybody out. I mean,
Sure.
well, so actually, a lot of jobs are like not particularly, exciting or whatever, but that happens to everybody. But for while I was working on Heck, I didn't even know if it was going to be published, so I obviously wasn't being paid. And so I was doing this. I was doing layouts for DC Comics, and I really enjoyed it. But it's also like, it's pretty below the line. Like, sometimes I get credited, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes it'd be like a special thanks. Sometimes they're just like, take your money and get out of here. And so I was doing like Justice League, and Pandora was one of them. Superboy. I did a miniseries called Bodies. I did a bunch of stuff on Fables and Fairest. Just layout after layout after layout, and it's pretty. There's rough art, just figuring out where people go and where the word balloons go, and how to divide up the page. And first of all, I never thought about it on the weekend. So I would just turn that in Friday 5 p.m. It's like, well, see you later. It was, and that was great. Like not having to kind of agonize over it, not having to wonder if a page is done. It's like, it's super done. And so and so then but I also it was like the best practice you could ever do, because it's like, instead of having to follow through on every page and go in and do all the graphs or whatever and forget all the lessons you learned on this sort of high level, that you could just kind of go like next page. And it was just a job, but it was also really a really rewarding time for different reasons, what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. Eric?
I had actually kind of a origin question. It's a little bit of a two-part question, but I wanted to know what was the one thing that kind of made you decide that I want to do comic books for a living? Was it a particular book, a character? Like, did you have a favorite character, or maybe an author? What was it that kind of said, I want to do that for a living? It sounds like you started young, so there must have been kind of an influence, an 80s influence for you.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Matt Fizzell, who did A Cynical Man and a whole bunch of other Antisocial Man and Cute Girl and a whole bunch of other stick figure comics. That was one of the ones where I was like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here. Doesn't have to be like beautifully rendered. It doesn't have to be anything, it doesn't have to be anything sort of like artistically fantastic. It's just fun. It's just fun to do. And of course, you can kind of see, like, he was obviously drawing it at the same size it was being published. And that was rare at that time. It's rare any time, but you can kind of go, oh, I see what pen that is, kind of, or I see what kind of pen that is, and I feel like I could kind of do that. Same thing with Ninja Turtles. Like they had that special paper that you would paint on it, and it would give you that sort of like gray or the hatching lines.
Oh yeah,
it was expensive, so they cut it in half, and they did two pages on the one sheet. And so those Ninja Turtles comics are really chunky, and really, you can really see the line art in it, and kind of go like, oh yeah, I think I mean, I can't do it. I can't do it like they can, but I can do it. You know, I could do something.
Yeah.
So those were moments that was happening. I don't think I really got super serious. I mean, I got serious about it when I was in college. Duo shade. Yeah, thank you.
Duo shade.
You know, but I remember I was doing a lot of theater. I really liked theater. I like writing plays. I like directing plays. did a lot of stagecraft and like set design and set building and costume design and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that. I liked the professor who sort of taught me. She was sort of the first sort of artistic influence who kind of taught me about like researching things and sort of, you know, knowing what you're talking about, and these are the formats and things you need to take. And so, I mean, I think it's kind of funny because it's like comics and theater don't really have a whole lot in common, but there was a lot that I learned in that process. But then when I went on to do comics, there was a lot of stuff that stuck in there. And one time I directed a Joyce Carol Oates play one time, and then later I got to meet her at a book signing or whatever, and so I brought her the program that had the stuff and a little drawing of the character. And she's like, "Oh, this is really cool. This is, you know, like, what are you doing now?" And I was like, "Oh, I write and draw comics." And she goes, "Oh." She's super unimpressed. And I'm like, "All right, well, that's going in my back pocket for the cocktail party. I met Joyce Carol Oates." And she goes, "Not impressed with me at all."
It's always fun to disappoint people that aren't our parents, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I did that years ago.
I think that's a great story. You should tell that whenever you can.
Well, especially now that she's on like social media and she's a complete lunatic. Like, you know, like sort of in a fun way, sort of in a lunatic way, you know. But,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, she's her posting is pretty unhinged, and I don't know if she's still on Twitter or if she's on Blue Sky or what. But
your friend Ken wants to know what was the Oceanographic Society work.
So I had my aunt, who's really my dad's cousin, worked for the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And she wanted them to do some sort of outreach stuff, and so I did a comic years ago, 25 years ago, about it was called Space Weather, and it was basically about like, you know, about the sort of magnetic sort of waves that come from the sun and all that sort of stuff, and how the Earth sort of deals with all of that. And you know, and I used my own characters that were kind of like a scientist and like an alien and stuff, like, you know, like just the sort of thing that you do to sort of get the idea across to kids. And I ended up doing 3 of those. I did one about space junk, which is like decommissioned satellites and stuff, and then I did one for the U.S. Geological Survey, which is about geomagnetism more specifically. And yeah, the ones for NOAA were fantastic. The ones for the USGS were a nightmare, but yeah. It's just splitting hairs, really, you know.
It sounds really cool, kind of like a cross between a promotional comic and an educational comic.
Yeah, it was neat, and I mean, I knew that they weren't going to like do anything with them, so I just said, send me basically as many as you got, and so I still have a bajillion of them, because I knew like that would be the only way to get them is from me, and so yeah, I bring them in little packs, yeah. I bring them little packs to conventions, and you know.
Well, if you bring them to Heroes Con, I know 4 guys that would probably buy some.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
They're light, so I like bringing them places.
Yeah, those
not like the hardcovers, you know.
I have so many of the educational comics because I think they're interesting. It's an interesting subgenre.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we did Kevin Cannon and I, no relation. He and I worked together for like 10 years, and we did a ton of educational comics. You know, we did one on genetics, we did one on evolution, we did one on rhetoric. He did one on philosophy. We did just a ton of stuff like that. It was really fun. We worked with Jay Hostler, who, if you like educational comics, Jay Hostler is one of the, you know, he's one of the main guys. Oh, and we did one on the U.S. Soviet space race and one on the bone wars, paleontology, like the rival paleontologists in the 1800s with Jim Ottaviani.
You're really underselling these, man. These sound excellent. These really
they're
sound
really
excellent to
They
me.
were really fun. I mean, Kevin and I really did a lot of educational stuff, and it was really interesting because we really sort of tried to do stuff that was either sort of like science history, like the Bowen Wars, or like this U.S. Soviet space race, or stuff that was really conceptual, because comics are so good at explaining things visually and sort of saying like, oh, here's a diagram of how RNA works or whatever. And so the what was I going to say? Anyway, so those are the two things that I really wanted to do. Was either like science history or sort of explaining concepts that were a little bit heady. But like when we got in that space, they were like, "Oh, you should do adaptations of classic literature." And I was like, "No." They offered us Fahrenheit 451, and we were like, "No, that's not for us." And of course, it sold incredibly well. I mean, Tim Hamilton crushed it. He did an awesome job, but we were just like, "Man, we should have done that. That was really dumb."
Yeah, I think I've read that actually.
Yeah, I'm sure, and it's great. I still don't think that I would have really enjoyed it, because I also sort of feel like, I don't know. I mean, I just sort of feel like it's a classic literature. You read it, you don't have to read it as a comic book.
No, you don't have to. I don't mind well done adaptations though either, and that was a good one. JSS wants to know, do you know what year your space weather book was from?
It was either 2000 or 2001. Forever ago.
Your friend Ken gave you a really nice compliment here that you impart wonderful whimsy to the educational stuff, which really gets to younger people. So,
that's very important too for the younger crowd.
And you're moving books, man. Chonko just bought Chainsaw Vigilante 1 and 2.
All right, don't say I didn't warn you.
So
hey, I love it.
I wanted to go back briefly to the educational comics, because two of us here have a background in education. Nate is a current teacher and I am a former teacher. And I have found that I was wondering what your research looked like for those, because I have found that if you want to understand a difficult scientific topic as a layman, go to kids' science websites, because to explain something to a kid, you need to really have a firm grasp of it. So I was wondering,
right? But you don't let anybody see you do that, because like, are you really researching?
Yeah, no. You have the Smithsonian pulled up in another tab. You've got like some peer-reviewed something.
Right? But it's just like a wall of like data. Yeah. No, luckily we were just the artists on most of those things. I did the writing for those ones for NOAA and USGS, but all the stuff on genetics. Well, that was written by Mark Schultz, and I would say he is an extremely well-researched layman as well. And he's like, "Oh, I would never do that again," or he's to something to that effect, because he was like, it was so hard because, in a way, I didn't know what to leave in and what to take out, and he had all these people helping him, or a person helping him, but it was also that's the wrong link.
Oh, that's not it.
That's somebody else. Somebody else did that and talked about how they were inspired by my comic.
Yeah, it's definitely not as good.
So anyway, I think. So luckily, we only had to do the visual stuff. I mean, there's plenty to be done there, but it was nice that somebody could kind of bracket it for us and say, like, you really only need to be responsible for things between here and here, instead of the entire breadth and narrowing it all down. So, that was really fun. I mean, obviously, it's great to work with Kevin. I don't know if you know Kevin Cannon's work. He doesn't do a lot of stuff in comics, but he does a lot of illustration. He does a lot of he does all these posters for like independent bookstores, which are all over the place, which is fantastic. And he's maybe is the best cartoonist I've ever worked with, but except for all the other ones that so anyway, it was really interesting, and I think it ran its course too. Where I was like, after 10 years, I was like, I'm not as interested in this anymore. It's fun, but it was also like, oh, I want to do fiction again, or I want to do, want to go for something really weird and do a monster prison book.
Yeah. I have Kaiju Max on order from the library.
Oh, okay, good.
So I did read the first issue online, and it's very different from Sleep in terms of it's bright, it's colorful, it's
colorful.
enormous.
200,000 characters. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked really wild.
Yeah.
Yep, we all.
Yeah. I want two. In fact, I have many. Yeah. But yeah, well, yeah. Like, so I worked, and of course, I worked on Kaiju Max for 7 years. I mean, it was probably, he talked about the megafauna. It's a very, very nicely. It fits very nicely into sort of like a swear word for the giant monsters.
Oh, nice.
And but yeah, so it was really fun to do that book, which is completely out of left field and has so many characters in it, and it has that kind of premise where it's like everything but the kitchen sink. You could just kind of throw in whatever else you want. Like, oh, you want something that deals with like time travel? Yeah, I'm sure there's an alien who could time travel or whatever. We could throw them in. Or, oh yeah, these mecha, like worship the cloud, or these whatever. Like, there's so much stuff that you just kind of go in every direction and not really worry about whether it's all hanging together particularly well, because it's all a satire anyway. Whereas then to move to Sleep, where it's like, oh, there's like 5 characters, it's all takes place in this sort of like, quarter-mile circle, and and I'm sort of very, conscious of keeping the lore and the sort of the the sort of the backstory and the world building very tight and very sort of, all in my head at this, at the same time. I don't get a chance. I don't allow myself to just kind of be like, yeah, and then this will be in it. It's like, no, if it isn't established, it's not coming in. So
did you choose to tell a story like this after Kaiju Max? Like, did you think it would be a break from something that was so big? And if so, was it?
It isn't it isn't particularly a break. I think it's a little bit easier to sort of like knock out an issue just in that there's not as much happening, so you don't have to kind of keep bringing stuff in. But I kind of took a break after Kaiju Max when I did like, I did like a Rick and Morty one shot, and I did like a bunch of other like little things. But this was more like, no, that the clock's ticking. It's hard. It's really it's really stressful. So it didn't feel like a break at all. I mean, it is a palate cleanser. It's kind of nice. Like,
okay,
oh, it's fun. It's fun to like, going from color to, I mean, it's not like it's black and white exactly, but it's just tones. It's just gray. It's kind of fun, because then you could be like, instead of thinking about hue and any of that stuff, you're only thinking about value, and you're only thinking about like, oh, okay, here's a hot light on the top of this person's head, and then there's a bounce light from the ground coming up, and you kind of sort of describe people's faces in that way, or or describe objects in that way, and it can be really fun and not feel like, oh, it's less than color. It's like it hopefully it feels like, well, I'm kind of making you feel a certain way about this thing that it wouldn't feel that way if it was in full color.
I was wondering about that. If you pick that monochromatic black and white grays for a certain reason, because I mean it kind of gives me that almost classic horror movie noir feeling.
That's what I was gonna say, and
it's perfect for setting up like a mood, type of thing. I mean, was that a reason why you went that way?
It was. The main reason was that, like, you can't really tell from the first issue, but this comic is going to get extremely gory. Oh. And so I was just like, I needed to kind of have a way to mute all of that gore and all of that sort of like unpleasantness, because I didn't feel like, because this isn't sort of a jump out and blow your face off kind of comic. It's sort of this queasy sort of like journey of discovery, and and like there's awfulness, but I think with combination between toning down all the color to the point that there's no color, and my art style, which is like looks like it's for kids, it's very cartoony. I think that will kind of softens it a little bit and lets you think about it more than being shocked by it. And Kaiju Max is the same way. There's all sorts of blood and guts, but my art style, I think, makes you kind of go like, that's messed up, but I don't have to like shut the comic and throw it across the room. Like it's.
I was gonna say that I was reading Sleep, and my favorite moment in it, I'm not gonna like give anything specific, but there is a moment with an old woman outside of a coffee shop that I really, really thoroughly enjoyed because everything was like, it was like normal-ish, normal, and then like just this like uncanny flip of a switch, and the art style and the shadows, and I think really, really helped with that. My second favorite moment was actually in your letters section where you were talking about. I love the letters section, by the way.
I could talk to you about that forever. I can't not do it. Okay, yeah.
But one of my favorite moments was you had a question. So what's the deal with all the red stuff? And it said I could add a little more red to each page without making the boring old "here is blood" maneuver. But then underneath it, you have in red, in italics, but effective, I grant you. And like that was like weirdly unsettling to see, like, oh, there's an asterisk, I wonder what it says, and then it's like a second like sinister voice coming out.
It's somebody else.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was effective, I think.
I wasn't trying to make it like a spooky meta commentary or anything. I just was sort of like, it really was probably making it red because I wanted to make sure people saw it.
And speaking of the newsletter, you said in the newsletter that you was talking about how you use very old versions of Photoshop, InDesign, and Clip Studio. Was that because that's what you had, or was it where you're familiar with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's just what I've always used. I was at a bar with some friends the other night, and like one of the guys there works for Microsoft, and I described to him my computer setup, and he was appalled. First of all, he thought it was idiotic that I was still using Windows 10, and I'm like, get over yourself. Like it's
it works, right? It works.
Yeah. I went straight from Windows 7 to Windows 10. I keep holding on to things as long as I possibly can. So anyway, but then all my Adobe suite is all like CS5. I mean, it's got to be 20 years old almost.
Yeah.
And for one thing, it's like I'm not giving them another penny. I've given them so much money. I gave them so much money up to that point.
I didn't know maybe there's this vintage world that I didn't know about where y'all are starting to go back and use cool old Photoshops and stuff to do my book with.
No, and in fact, it really sucked because I got a new monitor. I got a new graphics card, and I got a new monitor for my computer. And then it's like, this Photoshop did not know what to do with any of that stuff. So it's like, oh, a 4K monitor? I believe your menus will be this big. So I mean, I'm absolutely not recommending it to anybody. Like I probably would love to use the new Photoshop, except for all the AI stuff. But it works for me, so I'm like, I don't care.
I thought you might be starting some kind of new trend where everybody's going back and using the old stuff again. It's like, hey, you got to have it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to go back to like paper and pens or anything. But let's just use old crappy Photoshop.
Yeah, tech hipster. Yeah.
Tech hipster. Oh God. Yeah. Let's be clear. It's not that.
Do you do you have a lot of sketches on Instagram, and when you go to a con or you do an appearance, do you do sketches on paper for people?
Yeah. I love doing sketches on paper, and it's like just doing watercolor, just usually figures with a little tiny bit of background or context around them. And I love that sort of stuff. And I mean I really just do digital comics because of speed. I just don't think that I'd be able to keep up. And it's there's a couple things where you can kind of work out, you can kind of do tones and stuff like that in a way that you couldn't on a white sheet of paper. You know what I mean? Just like at an earlier stage. Like I feel like with paper you have to do everything exactly in order. You have to do you have to do the roughs, and then you have to do the pencils, and you have to do the inks, and the inks are completely finished, and then you can start coming in with like tones or colors or any of that stuff. And I feel like on Kaiju Max, when I was really under the gun, I would be like, all right, well, I don't exactly know what all these characters are going to be doing, but I know what the sky's going to look like. So I would just start building the sky into the file, and it was like, oh, okay, well, at least that could kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, and have it not be something I have to deal with at the end.
So, what was the process with sleep? Was there like did you do like the boxes first, or did you do the art, or did you try to figure out where you just put your word bubbles, or?
I mean, yeah, I mean, usually I'll do sort of like a thumbnail. You know, it's not really the size of a thumbnail. It's about like an inch and a half by, 2 inches or something like that. And and I'll kind of figure out like, oh, this is what will be in the big panel, and then this like row will sort of accomplish this thing. Like it wouldn't necessarily even be the whole thing that's going to be in there. Sometimes if it's a very talky scene, I'll just go on into the file and I'll type out sort of the dialogue as it kind of occurs to me, and I'll kind of start tracking it in there and sort of editing things out, and maybe going like, oh, this is a small word balloon, and it's a close up on someone's face. I can kind of make it into a narrow little thing, and it's like, oh, that's nice, it's locked in. Okay, then we can. Okay, this is someone just punching somebody else in the face. All right, let's give a big panel for that. And, I don't really write. I don't really write a script. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for me, because I feel like you do a lot of like describing things and then kind of, I don't know. I just make myself notes, But yeah, I think that it comes from a lot of. It depends on the type of scene. If it's a very visual scene, I'll just like knock out all the pictures and then kind of say they're going to say what they're going to say. And then if it's a very talky scene, I'll work out the dialogue. And a lot of times I'll just kind of figure out the big panels, and I kind of space them out through the issue, and then just kind of work up to them. It's like, oh, this scene's going to lead to boom, and then what's that?
I was like, yeah, like I noticed your books are very square. Everything's square and kind of streamlined. All cool looking.
Yeah, and all in thirds.
Neat.
I didn't always have things in thirds, but I kind of thought that would keep me. Keeps the pacing a certain way, and it allows me, because it's so uniform, that it allows me to have these really skinny little panels, which I kind of love because they're really easy, and then also if you can have a lot of people with a lot of back and forth dialogue, and it doesn't seem like you're just burning pages. You know what I mean? Like sometimes if you have a six panel page, like 2x3. And people are just talking, it's like, oh my God, this is just going on for ages. And you kind of feel like you're just burning up the whole issue. Why don't,
Yeah.
You'd be done with this in a page if you had teeny weeny little panels.
So since you don't write a script, do you have, are you have the story in your head and you're kind of, do you see it in your head and you're going, and as you're laying it out, you're making changes to what you think people might say because it might fit better, like if someone writes a comic for somebody else to draw, they're going to get it and it's not going to look the way it did in the writer's head, but for you it can.
And I was going to say
it doesn't really. I mean, there's always changes. Well, yeah, actually, I don't know. It's probably too blurry to see, but the whole series is laid out right here. Like all this. So all those pink ones on the the sides, those are sort of like those I came up with first, where it's like, okay, these are the states that he goes to sleep and wakes up in, and because it's like we don't know what's all going on in the night. So like these are sort of the go to sleep and wake up state. And then I kind of have that space to kind of make some, I can kind of pace out the day, because everything's approximately a day, at least early on, and it's like it's not exact, but it can kind of constrain you where you're sort of like, okay, well, there's really only room for 7 scenes at most, and they're going to have to be pretty tight. So I can just kind of write that sort of stuff down and figure it out on the fly. But it is kind of nice to have. It worked a lot. It worked a lot more specifically in Kaiju Max, where I had 100 like characters and a bunch of like storylines to keep track of. This is pretty straightforward, but it is good to remind myself, like, okay, this is how this one ends. This is how this one ends. And and a lot of times I'll go in on, because I've got files for all of the issues, like that just have blank pages in them. But then I can kind of go, oh, I know how 6 ends. I think I could probably just like lay out or even pencil the last 4 pages of issue 6. And then it's like, then it's like you get all this free like setup, because you'd be like, oh, oh, that's a great moment. But I haven't set any of that up yet, so I have to make sure I set it up. Okay, that's going to be a great punchline to all this other setup that I haven't done yet.
So there was a question that got asked earlier that I was thinking about, which is, have you ever changed a plot midway through because something changed over time? Or the way that I would phrase that is like, has a character ever made a decision that surprised you, the writer, and you had to change something that you had in mind for later?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, so the comic Heck, which is about a guy who has a portal to hell in his basement, and it was all just like, and his name is Hector. So yeah, like, so, anyway,
you just keep selling it, man. I'm writing that one down too.
Yeah, order it. It's actually, that's my favorite book that I've ever done, and then, I mean,
well, that's one of my questions.
That was the thing. It's a very silly concept. You know, he's basically like Doc Savage or Indiana Jones in hell, and he has a little mummy sidekick who's like his little friend who was chewed up by one of the demons on one of their earlier adventures, and he like kind of shoveled him all his guts together and like wrapped him up in bandage. Just like, he's pretty much fine now.
How many issues is that?
It's just one graphic novel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, that like is this absurd concept, you know, and it's like, you know, he runs this business where he's like, oh yeah, just you wanted to resolve something with your dad, or you wanted to figure out something about the will. Yeah, he's probably just a couple, you know, just a couple circles down. We'll go find him. And so yeah, so I started writing this comic, and then I did it in chapters, and I was putting it online and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, all of a sudden this comic got really sad because, you know, it's like he goes into hell, and all of a sudden things switch because it's like, oh yeah, I forgot how terrible this place is, you know. And then, you know, and of course it's like I had Dante's Inferno. I was just using Dante's Inferno, and so it's like I'm just kind of checking off all the boxes. He's going down each one of the circles, and it's like it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I had kind of set up all these little things like, oh yeah, we got to look out for so and so. We got to watch out for such and such. And at this time, my son, we adopted my son, and so he was 1 year old when he came home. And so all of a sudden, it was like this guy who's like going through this difficult sort of adventure with this tiny little precious, you know, and fragile person with him, all of a sudden started making a lot more, you know, started ringing a little more true to me. So this comic started to become this really sort of like heart-wrenching story. I mean, it's still silly, but it became really sad. It is a very sad comic. People tell me that they read it, and you know, like when their son was born, and I'm like, why? Don't do that. So it's like weaponized sadness for like new dads. Like it's just, it's brutal. But anyway, so like, yeah, so it basically worked out plot-wise, sort of the way that I was thinking it would, but the scenes were very different, and everything started to become sort of very focused on that relationship rather than, oh, you know, got to get the plot mechanics all done.
Really cool. Really cool.
I don't know if I've ever changed something because someone like guessed like the killer or something. I mean, I feel like I wouldn't, because I'd just be like, you know, I'd just be like, you're wrong, and then they'd be right, and who cares?
Well, that's even something that you have in Sleep. In your letter section, you have the conspiracy corner. And I had another question down here asking, like, how do you feel about people guessing either exactly right or completely and totally off the mark?
I love both of them. I mean, because one, like, the people are making so many guesses that it's like, neither one sounds better than the other, you know? Like, all the guesses sound kind of off the deep end. So I kind of, and of course I'm playing it up in the letters column, like, all right, you weirdos, like, you know, have at it, like, and I mean, I don't know, I think that this kind of stuff, this kind of horror stuff, it's not like the answer. It's not like you're going to get answers and you're going to go, aha, of course. I mean, you'll be like, oh, that matches up with all the clues or whatever that you'll see over the course of. But I also think, like, in a way, a lot of that horror stuff is a little bit arbitrary, where it's like, you know, yeah, it's a monster from this place and that place, and it did this, and this, and it's like, well, it could have been anything. You know what I mean? So people guessing, I don't really care. I would never change something because somebody guessed. I feel like, you know.
I feel like that symbol is very important. It was in there 7 times. It was drawn in the behind the coffee shop in the alleyway, and then it was on people's backs. So 7 times.
Well, yeah, it is fun to do something where it's like where I really want this comic to stay very true to its premise, which is like it's revealing all these sort of things. I'm not going to introduce any sort of like new mechanics or any sort of new stuff. I like the idea that it's like, yeah, all that stuff is just being laid out. You know, it's not all in issue 1, of course, but like, but it's fun to sort of like just be able to just add more stuff as it occurs to me. And the whole reason I did stuff in red was that like, and I mentioned it in the letters column, but it's like I kind of like the idea that I like putting stuff in the background, but everything is kind of normal. At least at the start, everything's pretty normal, and things are paced in a way where it's like, well, there's not a whole lot going on. So it's like, well, but if I put little clues in the background, then I can kind of pace these scenes out as like regular day in the life stuff, or terrifying horror stuff. But like then there's all these extra little clues and thingamajigs that you can look for. So
I kept focused. Like anytime there was red, I would look at it. I'm like, oh, he's trying to.
That means something.
Right, it means something, but then I can't figure it out and I feel stupid.
Well, that's not what I want. Well, and I think too, like it's fun to have things be in red because it's like you can always put in clues, of course, but like I feel like a lot of stuff would be so subtle or so far in the background that it wouldn't really be fair if it didn't call attention to itself, because it's like, oh well, didn't you see the rocks? And it's like, no, obviously I didn't. Be like, what?
Like the end of a bad mystery where they didn't give you any clue that it was that guy that did it. Right. Like that, yeah. It's so infuriating.
Yeah, and of course, you get afraid of that. So it's like, okay, I got to make sure that everything. I got to make sure I'm playing fair. So.
And when laying all this out, one thing I liked about issue 1 was like the cliffhanger at the end where he's laying on the couch and you see whatever you see underneath the couch. And I like comics like that. A lot of comic books today feel like they are written in trade form and they just divide it up 6 ways and you don't really get a cliffhanger at the end of each issue.
Yeah, and this this book is like that to a degree, but it also is it's divided in a very sort of like like in a way that's very intentional. Like it's these waking hours of this. But yeah, like I'm a big believer that it's like you got to have each issue be a real issue, yeah. or else just do it as a graphic novel. I mean, I know that there's business reasons to do it either way, but I just sort of feel like things should be the thing that they are. Yeah. And even when this is out as a graphic novel, I want those chapters to feel. I mean, I want in a book. I want the chapters. I don't want the chapters to just kind of feel like the next continuation. I want them to kind of feel like a discrete chunk that you can kind of go, all right,
Yeah, you need a customer to want to go pick up the next issue. You know?
Exactly.
I know. Yeah, each issue is going to be like that. You're going to be like, oh my god.
So you've mentioned movies. You've mentioned books. Is there a reason why this story in particular is a comic book, or like if it's just what you're most comfortable with? If you think that it could be like as good of a story in a different medium, like what other medium would you choose? That was a really convoluted way of asking that. I hope I got my point across.
I mean, I think it'd be an interesting like low budget movie. Like it would be great. Yeah. It'd be great to just be like, yeah, you could put this thing together for almost nothing.
I love that kind of stuff. You could put on Tubi.
I mean, of course, I always think like I do. I mean, I am sort of like loyal to comics. It's like I want my comics to be comics and all that stuff. But I also like, yeah, I mean, all my books kind of get talked about or or optioned or almost optioned or stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, obviously I want that to happen. That would be great. I would love a $40,000 check every couple of years for someone to option something, But I also, and I think that like, oh yeah, if it were done well, it would be awesome. But I also think like you've seen so many things get butchered that you kind of are like, it might work out great, and it might just have to not care about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You try to surprise everyone, you end up with the ending of Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Question from JX: how many months ahead of time are books at DC Marvel created before release? Like when you were doing your DC work, do you know how long it took for that to come out?
It's like, I wasn't really. I mean, I think that it really varies. I think that sometimes they're like, oh, we've got this artist who's pretty slow and who is a big get, but like, so let's get them working and get these 8 issues in the can or whatever, and then release them. But I also think like a lot of comics is like they're done 2 weeks before they're on the stands, like whatever the minimum, like window of time for the printer.
Now, you said you were on issue 4 right now of Sleep.
Yeah, and
is it complete?
Is 4 complete? Hell
yeah.
No.
So you got 3. Is 3 complete?
3 is turned in and complete.
Okay.
4 is, it's like 3/4 pencil. So, I'm fast to a
Dope
degree.
wants it now.
Like, do you call Todd McFarlane and say, "Hey, I'm done with 3, print it," or how does that work?
Well, there's a deadline. I mean, I've got to turn it in. It's like there's no sort of like, oh, when it gets done, it's like, no, it's got to be done. So like I just turned in 3, so it's like, well, I know I have a month to do 4, and if I'm 3/4 pencils, it's like that's reasonable, But like, there's no time to waste. But I can do it. And I sort of think like, okay, now I need to speed up my slowest part, which is writing. Like if it's written and laid out, I'm like, this is going to be a cinch. All I have to do is pencil, ink, letter, and tone this thing. It'll be no problem. But of course that is a lot of work, but it's very predictable. I know exactly how fast I can do it. Like my art style hasn't really changed in probably 15 years. And so I kind of know that like, yeah, like I can get into that level of density of inking, and pretty easily. I can a lot of times I can pencil if the layouts are there, I can pencil 4 pages in a day, and I can ink and in a different day I could ink 3 pages or something like that, with all the lettering and stuff.
So how many hours? How many hours do you put in that day to get that many?
It would be like 8. I feel like after that I'm no good. Like obviously everybody's on it. Everybody's done like all-nighters and stuff like that. But I'm too old for that kind of crap. Like I can't stay up all night to do anything because I'm a mess the next day. And then and I also just I like to think that I'd like to think that I'm a professional enough that I can just get it done in the amount of time that I've got. And then 2, sometimes the books are late, and you're just gonna, people just have to deal sometimes. Like I can't. I'm not gonna kill myself to make sure that a comic is, I'm not gonna work overnight for 4 nights. I don't know. I hear people doing that who are over 50, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, I mean that's the way you work when you're young. When you're
yeah, and I mean I get it and usually it was because like, oh man, I did not use my time well, like, and that's like I usually use my time fairly well, and I mean I think I also figured out like once I was doing a huge like volume of work on Kaiju Max, I realized, oh okay, there's ways that I can do these things so I can work all day and it's no big deal. Like if I'm penciling all day, I'll listen to like an audiobook, or I'll listen to podcasts, or all that stuff. Or when I'm inking all day, I'll just pick a show. Like I must have watched 7 seasons of like the Flash on the CW, where it's like I don't know if I ever would have really gotten around to it otherwise. But like yeah, sure. Oh, there's a shark on there. Cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
Like.
That's probably how that show was designed to be watched, I think.
I honestly think that they do on Netflix. They even talk about like laundry folding shows.
Yeah.
And it's like that's grotesque, but I mean, I gotta say it works pretty well for me.
But you gotta do something, man. And that shows CW superhero shows are great for getting a little work done around the TV, because you just need to look every now and again.
Yeah, and I mean, or like, I could watch all of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's like I know what's going on that show.
I was gonna ask because you have so many Trek sketches on your on your Instagram page.
Yeah, I wrote a Star Trek series 15 years ago, something like that. So that was pretty fun.
You did a Star Trek series?
Yeah, I wrote it, and Javier Aranda is the Spanish artist. He did the art on it. But yeah, like that was one of those things where you like got to hit the ground running, where you're like, like I know a lot about I know a fair amount about Star Trek back then, and then it's like, oh crap, like you got to know a lot about Star Trek if you're going to be writing it.
I was going to say something to you, Nate, but I didn't want your mind, your head to blow up because I know you and Trek.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had a Gowron sketch on his Instagram page, and I was like, "Kapla."
That's right.
Do you know what book that was? The Star Trek that you wrote?
Yeah, it was when IDW was doing it. It was called Ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe Peroni did the covers. It looks great. Yeah, it was. It's a little talky. I was really trying to cover my bases.
Trek.
Yeah,
I was about to say it's Star Trek. It should be talky.
It was really fun. It was really fun to do. It was really interesting to sort of like take that crew, and they're like, you can choose when it is. Basically just like choose what two episoades you want it to be in between. And so because they make sure that the star date is right and all that sort of stuff. And and they had an editor who was like, I was surprised at how hands off the editor was, because I was like, I'm winging it a little bit. Like I'm saying things that I think are right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think all they did was like, oh, he said he wants to go at warp 9 now. He'll go at warp 4. And I'm like, all right. Sure.
Warp 9's pretty fast.
That is pretty fast. That's like the bolts are coming out. So, but yeah, it was super fun to kind of go like, oh, no budget, or no limit to your budget, and so you can be, and also you can kind of be like, well, I want something for Picard to do, I want something for Riker to do, I want something for Dr. Crusher to do, I want something for, and so everybody had a little bit of like an arc, so I kind of reverse engineered it through that, where I was like, okay, we need, it has to do with like a medical emergency, but then Data's going to figure out a thing about like their number system. And
there you go, Nate.
Yeah.
What's up?
Can you see it in the thing?
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
There we go. Issue 1 of the 4, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, and I did layouts for that one too, kind of at no one's request. But
I just did it.
Well, it's like when you're writing something, you're kind of like, well, sometimes it's just like, I could describe this to you, or I could just show you what I'm talking about.
So do you see yourself as more of a writer, or as more of a visual artist?
I think I'm the kind of artist that writers like. you know what I mean? Like, I feel like my layouts and my visual style is very much trying to get the point that the writer is trying to get across the writer's point, as opposed to
very much like
like I'm not Tradmore, where it's like, holy crap, what that, what is all this insanity, or Daniel Warren Johnson or stuff like that, like where it's like the art isn't necessarily ever the point. I just want the art to convey the story really well. So I kind of feel like I'm a writer who draws. I prefer to have an idea for a story to then start drawing, rather than just draw. Like whenever I just sat down with a sketchbook, I'm like, yeah, I can draw some funny little guys, but I don't really ever sort of like come up with a drawing to do. Like it just, like I don't ever just sort of think in art. I think of an idea and then I'll do art of it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think whatever one that is.
So I got a question. I don't really understand the way all this works. So do you own all the rights to like Hack and to like Sleep and all that?
I do. I mean, they're sort of like at those publishers. Sleep, I do. I mean, everything. Like, because Image's whole deal is very hands off in terms of like rights and stuff. So I mean, there's a deal to publish them, but it's only comics. They don't care about like licensing or movies or anything like that. There's slightly different deal with Kaiju Max and Oni Press. There's a slightly different deal with Heck and Top Shelf / IDW. So yeah, it's like I own those things. I control them. You know what I mean? So like they couldn't sort of make them into a movie without my permission. As opposed to some place like Skybound where they would sort of say like they would own 51% of it, say, and the creator would own 49% of it. So like if they got it made into a movie, the writer wouldn't be able to stop it from happening, but they would still also really profit. And I understand that as a business model. That's not my favorite, especially for something that you feel very strongly about, like something like Heck, which is very personal to me. It's like I would be heartbroken if that weren't under my control, at least, mostly.
Yeah, I was thinking a while ago when you was talking about Hack, I could see how you really liked him. And I was wondering, I was like, well, he might pop up and sleep, but I didn't know if that could happen or not.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Be like, yeah, I've just been traveling through the nether realms. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's
Hack's killing all the
gonna reach
cows
behind and Xander's gonna move one of those post-its. You
Yeah,
wait.
like, oh yeah. I said I never changed my stories because people guess them, but
You said you wouldn't change it because someone guessed. You didn't say you wouldn't steal something good.
right. When somebody came up with a better idea.
Break out the pink sticky note pad.
Yeah. At long last, the pink sticky notes. There we go.
I bought that a while ago while we were sitting here. I bought that off
I love this FOMO squad. This is the best way to sell comics ever.
I ordered it from my library as we were sitting here.
Yeah, this was on my comic shop. I paid $8 for a used version, and it's a hardcover. So
it was out of print for a while, and so I would always go and just buy $8 copies of it and just sell them at conventions. And they would all have the like property of like the St. Louis library system. Or whatever.
That's awesome. That's so fun. That's so cool.
You sure you can sell this, Mr. Cannon?
Yeah.
So
You're damn right I can.
it says first printing. Is there a second printing?
There is a second printing now. Yeah. The sececond printing is fairly different. Like it's
Same
just,
cover,
it's
same
better,
everything.
better blurbs on the back. There's
Does it have CGI dinosaurs like walking into the frame?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And Jabba the Hutt, a character I haven't mentioned until now,
Right.
shows up.
Hopefully, I'll have it for
wanted
Heroes Con
do-backs.
to get an autograph.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like I didn't order enough. I don't know if I'm probably only gonna have one copy at Heroes, so I gotta order some more.
We got press passes. Y'all get right in there and get that.
All right.
Yeah.
That's right. I love that show. It's such a fun show. I only started going a couple of years ago, even though Dustin Harbin has been bugging me to go for like almost 30 years. Like,
Wow.
But from what I've heard about it, it's the biggest like comic con. I mean, it's 4 comics. It's not got a lot of other stuff like the that's what
no Power Rangers to speak
No Power
of.
Rangers.
Yeah. Less
They're at-
cosplay and less
They're
famous
every
people.
last one.
Yeah. I mean, I like all that stuff too. I obviously go to a million comic conventions, but like it really is fun when you go to a show and you're like, oh, the guest of honor, like top line is like Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. And you're like, all right, okay, now we're talking. Like this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. What is a Timothy Chalamet?
That's right. He will not be at this show.
So you go to cons, you make your career in comics. I mean, are you a comic book reader and collector?
I am, but it's spotty. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just went to the local show here in Minneapolis, SpringCon, and it's like I pick up some stuff from people here, and it's like I'd like to be a Wednesday warrior, like go in on and really like get those comics, and it's like every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, I'm going in, I'm gonna get some more comics, and then it's like, first of all, I come out of there and I'm dead broke, like. I'm like, I make comics. Of course, I can't afford comics. Like, and then, and so I love it too. But I also just like I'll pick up one issue and then I'll come back and I'll be like, oh well, you can't get any surrounding issues because they all sold out because it's a Brian Hitch Batman or whatever. And you're like, well, yeah, okay, I'll find the trade sometime.
Yeah.
So there's so much out there to read.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that like if they're putting a new title out that you want to that gets your eye, like a writer or artist that you love almost everything they do, so you always at least check it out?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, like Danny Warren Johnson is one of them. I mean, he's a great artist, nice guy. I like him a lot. And I mean, Craig Thompson just put out Ginseng Roots. I don't know if you know that book, but it's yeah. I mean, he was just here in Minneapolis, and yeah, I got to get that sketch, and I was like, oh man, it's like, yeah, like there's so many people where, I mean, there's a lot of artists where it's like no matter what they do, it's always artists. Like writers, it's always on probation. Like I love it's the writing that's going to make something my favorite thing in the whole world, but I don't even pick it up if I don't have a connection to the artwork. And so like, I mean, but like, yeah, Chris Samney and Mark Waid on Batman and Robin, like that's unbelievable. Like, I'll always pick that up if I see it. It's so cool. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's like now that I'm trying to think about it, my mind is blank. But I mean, there's a million artists where it's like I'll always grab their stuff. It's always going to be good.
So who would be your dream character if you could either draw or write one?
Good question, Joe.
DC or Marvel or Image called today and said, we want you on this. What would you want to do?
I mean, it's funny because so many of that stuff it's like all the stuff that I thought about wanting to do is like, oh, people already did it, But I mean, it's funny. I would really love to do a Deep Space Nine comic. First of all, I think that would be really fun. I mean, there's like like if I was going to do Marvel comics, I'd probably want to do I think it'd be fun to do New Mutants, like the way that they used to do it, the way that Claremont and Alan Davis or John Bogdanoff used to do, where they were really just like kids at a school. Like I think that'd be really fun.
I was hoping you'd say Hulk and Heck crossover.
Oh yeah, Hulk.
Hulk. There is a Hell Hulk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I would actually Hulk would be kind of fun. I mean, I feel like every time I try to do something at Marvel or DC, they're like, no, thank you. Like the way that I would draw Hulk would be too silly, and they would be like, this is dumb. Like, no, we don't want that. We don't want that from you at all. Yeah, I mean,
Scotty Young's getting big these days, and he's drawing all kinds of silly stuff.
Scotty Young is one of a kind. I mean, you can't replicate what he's done. He's incredible, but he also sort of has this sort of vibe about him, or vibe about his art that people are like, I don't know. He's so unashamed of his cartooniness that that people just are like, well, all right, let him do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And he does.
And he does. He frequently does everything he would want to do. Yeah. I would want to do a lot of team books. I think that would be really fun. It'd be fun to do any X-Men stuff. It'd be fun to do Legion of Superheroes. It'd be fun to do
Nate, New Warriors is coming back.
New Warriors, right?
Yeah.
Some speedball action.
Oh man, I love Speedball. When that came out and Steve Ditko was back at Marvel for a brief minute.
Yeah.
This is great.
He bounced in.
Bounced back. I mean,
out.
and it's those comics were kind of dumb, but you're like, well, I see what you're doing here. I mean, you're basically doing a 80s Spider-Man. It's just kind of fun,
Those are the best ones, though. Is this is kind of dumb. When's the next one coming out? I gotta buy it.
Yeah, I love that. Like the new Metamorphose series. It's that's exactly my thought on it. Where this is kind of dumb. When's the next issue coming out?
It was really fun, and they canceled it.
Oh, they did? Oh no!
Yeah.
Nate, do you want the rest of us to leave so that you and Xander can talk?
Yeah, we could just talk about all the so Dazzler.
Dazzler. Oh man, I would I do like Dazzler. I think they're missing. I think that they're missing a lot of opportunities here. It's you could have made a Dazzler TV show that would have ruled. Just get any pop star to do Dazzler. It would have been awesome. Anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe they will.
There she is.
Yeah.
There's my girl.
Yeah, and it's you couldn't even decide. It's 70s Dazzler, 80s Dazzler. They're all great.
All right. I'm I'm being shamed personally in my life right now by my brother-in-law, who says I won't acknowledge that he said if one more person subscribes, I'll smoke a fat doob, and I did get to 420 subs.
Awesome.
So everybody, if you can, smoke a fat doob
Right.
for Hall Yeah Comics.
Or drink your Smirnoff Ice blue raspberry lemonade.
Or finish off that pineapple.
Or you could choose to not do that as well.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that tastes like
I'm enjoying the
BPA
blackberry
and
right now.
that.
So
Yeah, it tastes like microplastics.
Everything tastes like microplastics.
Yeah, we've all got like 7 credit cards flowing around our systems.
That's right.
So I'm curious. You said that Heck was your favorite like thing that you've ever made. On like a micro level, do you have like a favorite individual panel or a favorite like sentence or paragraph that you've written? Like, is there something that you look back and you're like, this is really, I'm really proud of this thing right here?
I mean, I think there is one panel. It's funny. The first thing that comes to mind, I don't know if this is the answer that you want, but this is the first thing that comes to mind was this panel in Heck where I realized something where I was, because I was drawing this comic at the same size that it's published. And so there's this point about halfway through the book where the two sort of characters sit on the edge of this cliff and look down at what would be like the deeper parts of hell. And he's like, they're kind of talking about like what they're going to do, like where they're going to go. And he's like, yeah, we gotta find Greg. And he's like right about there. And you kind of, and you're looking over his shoulder and he's pointing down and it's just into blackness, like there's nothing down there. Like it's just, and it's like while I was penciling it, I was like, oh, maybe I'll put a little like a light or something like that, something down there. And I'm like, nah, like I kind of just liked that there was this character that we're trying to get the logistics of all this stuff, and somebody's just pointing down into like completely deep darkness, and there's nothing in there. And I don't know, it was freeing to me, where I was like, yeah, because you just read that panel and then you move on, and you don't ever think about you don't have to have every last little bit of detail in every comic or in every panel, and you can just kind of keep moving on. It's not a very good answer though for what you're asking.
No. I think that it is. I think that tells deceptively much about you as like a creative person. But no, that's fascinating.
I did actually today I did a 3-panel sequence that I really liked, in that it was somebody looking. It was 3 like completely different shots. One of somebody kind of far away in a doorway. One of a close up of Jonathan in the thing, and then a panel of the person who was in the doorway hugging him. And so like they sort of crossed this intervening distance between panels, but it reads really well. Like I was really happy with how like it was these 3 very still panels, but somehow like all this action had happened in between them without really showing any of it. Which anyway. That's also not a good answer.
It's a great answer. A question from Peter: is there anything published that makes you jealous? Do you wish it was your creation? Like something where you're like, oh, I had an idea like that. I could have done that.
I mean, I have 100.
Superman, I could have done that.
Yeah, 100 ideas where I was like, that was in my notebook. Then they did it, and then but it's also basic stuff. Like when Irredeemable came out, I was like, oh, I had an idea that was like that. I was like, yeah, idiot, everybody did. Like, oh, an evil Superman? Wow, when did you come up with that one?
Don't tell anybody.
What if Superman? But get this.
Yeah, get this. He's not nice. But yeah, so let's see. I mean, there's a lot of stuff where like if the way that it's drawn, I'm like, oh wow, like I wish. I mean, like, well, you can see it in the background, the Batman Year One. Like I'm just like, wow, if I could have ever drawn something like that, again, like these with these simple panels that sort of with all this movement that's sort of like implied by it, like that's the thing that that you just think like that's exactly what I would what I wish that I could have made. I mean, I also think like the first like 10 issues of Excalibur, when it was like Claremont and Alan Davis, and it was this sort of like really sort of gentle story. I mean, it had adventure, but it had humor, and it had like characters, and Kitty Pryde was such a strong character, like kind of like in a way that you haven't really seen before since, like that she was this sort of like unsexualized teenage girl who is just sort of like everybody liked her. Yeah, there we go. I mean, like in that cover, unbelievable.
That cover, I love that book.
Yeah, and I mean, just how and like all that sequence where they get kept kidnapped by Arcade, and like they swap bodies with the crazy gang. I mean, it's all this sort of like character business that was so wonderful and so fun, and every time that there would be like an alternate universe version, like before the multiverse, but like these alternate universe versions of Excalibur that was from like the Nazi.
Oh, I thought that was so cool.
It was so cool, and how freaky was it that they were all Nazis except for Kitty, who was still Jewish, and she was emaciated. I was like, this is kind of like almost too much. Like this is really intense, for such a not silly, but I mean a sort of a lighthearted comic.
There were like you had said, New Mutants and Excalibur, Justice League during that era. There were so many like really well done team books, and there aren't as many of those now. Like I don't see the ensemble cast doing as well as it did back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, X-Men is always kind of doing that stuff, but I feel like they're always. I mean, I loved it when they would be like, well, guys, we just, we solved like one mystery or whatever. We're going to the beach. I was like, that, yeah, like I want to read the beach one. I actually don't even need to see the mystery one. That's, like I always thought that was so much fun. And I mean, Claremont was a master of that kind of stuff. And I mean, I mean, I kind of felt like his sort of like intense adventure stuff was kind of like, they were all right. But I mean, his sort of like fun hanging around stuff was like, this is super fun. This is great comics, So yeah, I wish that there was more of that. I wish there were more teen books that were basically humor books with a teeny tiny bit of adventure. I mean, like you said, Justice League. It's like, I mean, they started off with some adventure and they went to almost no adventure, and that was kind of when it was the best.
It was the best when they never left the embassy. Like when they just hung around and ate food and yelled at each other.
Well, and they realized what they had in Kevin McGuire. Like this is the man who is better than anyone else in the entire world at doing faces. And so we're going to have everybody be like super animated, super funny, and kind of go, I don't know, like with all their kooky faces. And it's like, because Keith Giffen was doing the layouts, and he could do layouts for any kind of story. But like he did such a great job of like doing that sort of like physical comedy and sort of like silly humor that and then Kevin was just the best to ever do it at that kind of stuff.
You talking about silly humor and going to the beach at the end of the adventure and all this, everything you're explaining to me, I feel like you would be a big Scooby-Doo fan.
Oh yeah, that's my childhood.
Yeah, I love Scooby-Doo.
Of course, yeah, of course. I mean, and I think anything that's like let's figure out how all these characters interact with each other, and like everybody has a relationship with everybody else, and we can kind of figure out what's funny about all of that stuff. I mean, I think that is a little bit missing in comics, and I'm not going to be a cynic and say like, oh, nobody's doing it anymore, but it's more like, but I do think that like there's such a pressure to be like this superhero comic has to be epic in scope. It has to be like everybody has to be almost dying at every moment, and it's like I don't know. I think I feel like when you read, and not to be again a crank and go back and read the first 25 issues of Spider-Man, it's like it's utterly gripping because you're like, is he going to date Gwen Stacy or or Liz Allen? I don't know, but like
that's kind of the fascinating thing, though, is that a lot of the reasons why we like comic books are like, yes, superheroes punch their way out of problems, but the problems that they can't punch their way out of tend to be like the most interesting and most compelling things about those characters.
Yeah, and every once in a while, someone will get Superman like that, where it's like, okay, Superman can punch his way out of any problem, but his big thing is his secret identity and his friends and his, and like all these little things that he has to kind of manage as a hybrid of these two people. And it's like, yeah, that stuff is really great. Like, I mean, Doomsday is fine and everything, but you kind of know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, they're gonna beat the ever loving hell out of one another, and then Superman's gonna like kiss Lois Lane while flying over the Daily Planet or whatever.
Yeah. There's something to that too, but like, yeah.
The four of us, I mean, we read anything that we would like to read, but we all seem to kind of gravitate a lot towards indies right now because they seem to be the place where those kind of stories we're talking about still get told.
Yeah.
There's just it's like a renaissance right now of anthology horror. There's so many out there, and there's just more risk taking. Like you said, the superhero books almost aren't fun to read, some of them, because they feel like they always have to be epic. It always has to be amazing and over the top.
Yeah.
And they're not giving us the character moments with the characters that we like. Like, we like the character, not necessarily just all the over the top stuff.
Yeah.
Unless that's all the character is. Then,
and I think
then heap it on.
Too, like when I was talking about sort of the difference between the premise of Kaiju Max and the difference in the premise of Sleep, which is like, well, Kaiju Max could fit into something like a Marvel universe because it's like it's everything, just but that's what Marvel and DC and all those sort of like massive universes feel like, where it's like you can't have I wonder if aliens have arrived on this planet for the very first time story in the DCU. It's like, what? Of course they have 100,000 times, like they've taken over the planet probably 3 times, and so there's no way to have that kind of story, something that's pretty subtle, or is our world, but with one teeny tiny tweak. It's like, no, there's 200 million teeny tiny tweaks already, and you have to kind of run with that. And again, that's fun, but there's also there's all sorts of stories that you can't tell unless you kind of somehow disengage it from the DC universe, like the way that Hitman did, but even that is all kind of a joke, like it had to be done tongue in cheek, or else it wouldn't have worked. But yeah, I mean, indie comics are nice, like that's the other thing. You're swimming against the tide, because you don't have any of that sort of like, built-in readership, but you can also sort of say like, well, now I can start from scratch in this universe that I've created. And tell you exactly the story that I want, and with no Spider-Mans in it.
Because they get very upset when you
right. Oh yeah, they really yelled at me the last time I put a bunch of Spider-Mans in there.
Yeah, when Spider-Man showed up being tortured in hell and heck, like I'd imagine like, you got a letter from the mouse about that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Not cool, man. That's what the mouse said.
So Sleep issue 2 comes out the Wednesday after Heroes Con.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll see if I have issues with it.
Yeah, that's
secretly
awesome.
Under the table.
How many covers will issue 2 have?
How many cover? 2? Yeah, or A and a B cover. Yeah. Tim Seeley did the second cover. So yeah, it was. It's fun because it's like Tim Seeley was like the kid starting in comics in Minnesota when I was just a little bit older than a kid. And so it's kind of fun to see like him going from like doing his little cheesecake comic to being like the biggest hotshot in the world. So
I got one more question. I grew up on reading Conan books and stuff, and they always had the map in there. And I noticed on the first page there's like a little map. Will this be changing? Where the red is?
It'll be changing every issue. Yeah, like, and I keep having to make myself notes. There's like, this is for placement only. You need to fix it. Like, but yeah, I love maps. And in fact, I always have to make myself a map, whether it shows up or not. Like in Heck, there was a map that I was using as something to sort of like figure out the plot. But yeah, I love the maps, and I love kind of like, especially something that's small enough like that where you can kind of go like, oh, if they're here, they're pretty close to this. Like it's an easy walk to here, but oh, it's a long walk to here.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw the map, I thought of the old video game Paperboy, where like when you and
Yeah.
but that's what I thought. I was like, as people are murdered, the red will spread around this
Yeah,
map.
you know. Yeah. People are murdered with the newspaper to the head.
In that game, yeah, like
Yeah,
you break
That's
a
how I
window,
played
they
that game.
unsubscribe. Like
That's right. That's right.
I don't. I never finished a week in that game.
Oh,
It was
no,
too
no.
hard.
No, that game was way too hard. Yeah, no, I think that I really like. I mean, part of it was making that inside front cover was something where it's like, oh, I could do all the work up front and then just add little things to it, and it'll still be interesting. And but I don't have to do any more work. I'm not trying to be super lazy, but I am trying to like maximize my time here.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like you said, you know the process, like in how to do things that take advantage of that, because you don't want to be up the night before trying to turn in your paper.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, that was always me, and it's like if I've learned anything, and it's like I'm not perfect, but like if I've learned anything, it's really to get myself, to get things. I think the panic kicks in earlier now. Like, like I finished issue 3 on Friday, and this Monday morning I was having a heart attack because I'm like, I got to get going on issue 4.
Yeah. You said Kaiju Max was 7 years?
Yeah, 7 years. 6 books, which have now been collected into 3 hardcovers, and then now they're making 3 sort of thick soft covers. The second one will be, the third one will be out in maybe the summer.
So then this Sleep will be probably roughly a year. You said 8 issues. So
yeah, it'll be probably 9 or 10 months. Hopefully more like 9. But yeah, because then because after drawing Blood and Guts for like 8 months, I have to then immediately switch gears and do a kid's graphic novel.
Well, I was going to piggyback on Christopher Parker's question here, like where you get your inspiration. Do you have a constant flow of ideas? Do you have things jotted down? Because you did 7 years is a long commitment to do one book like that, and this is shorter, and you've already got the thing that you're going to do after.
Yeah.
So do you have a trajectory for the next little bit, or do you have a list and you're just like, see how you feel?
Yeah, I have a list. I mean, and it's because it's like the not nice thing. I mean, not really the nice thing, but like being a writer artist, it's like you're pretty slow. Like in terms of you could maximum 1 book a year, but I mean probably not even that. And whereas if I were a writer, I feel like I might be like, really going back through my files and looking for some new stuff, because it's like, because you could be doing 4 or 4 projects at once. So yeah, I've got stuff from. I mean, Sleep is an idea that I came up with, I think, in the 90s. So like,
wow.
Which is, and it's gone through a bunch of iterations and stuff like that. But I had it mostly sort of like locked in to what it is now. Probably almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
But it's just, I would pitch at places and they'd be like, nah, so I was just, all right, fine. It's sitting in my, hard drive. This pitch has been sitting in here for a while, but yeah. And I've got a couple of some science fiction project. I've got a, this kid's book that I kind of came up with on the fly because I found out that I had a friendly editor at this publisher. So I was like, all right, let's get some pitches in. And so I think that I've always just had a list and sort of just kind of working them off one by one. And the nice thing is now that I can really kind of do those and not have to kind of stop for a year to do like an educational comic or something else, or work on, ink a Marvel comic or something like that, which would be cool. But it's also like, it's fun to now be able to work through my list.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Do you think you're like you had this story 20 years ago? Do you think you're doing it better now than you could have back then?
Oh, undoubtedly. That was terrible. Well, it's like
me, that guy was an idiot.
Yeah. No, I mean, sure, but I also just think like I was the nice thing about, and again, it's like digital comics. I'm not like. I think it's too bad that I kind of have to do things digitally, but it is nice. It is nice to be able to be really consistent, to be really, to not like worry about like, did I get a good batch of paper this time? Is this inking looking good? It's like it's all going to look the same, and I could just kind of focus on the content, and I don't have to worry about the fingerprints of good and bad on the artwork, and I can just so when I started this project, I could kind of just go like, I think I know what it's going to be like, and I was right, and I got to just like kind of hit the ground running and get going instead of kind of adapting so heavily to every bit of media that I'm working on. I mean, paper and pens and this and that. And I can just do that stuff on sketches and commissions, and let that show the process.
Which people going to Heroes Con, there are a lot of us. He'll have a table, and you can go and see him and get a sketch.
Yeah. I'd love to do some sketches. I see somebody asked, do you miss the chance to sell original art down the road? Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, again, there's not a lot of. It's like, again, I'm not Tradmore or Daniel Warren Johnson. There's not like a huge aftermarket for my work, and so I don't worry about it. It's like if somehow I were drawing Spider-Man, yeah, I'd draw that on paper. I'd be selling those originals for $5,000, whatever they go for. But if I'm drawing my own funny little books, it's like I don't want to have to deal with it. I just don't have to worry about it.
I mean, that's a problem from what I understand, though, industry wide, is that, there's not as much original art because everything is done digitally. Like you said, for good or ill, it's just the way things are. Yeah. It makes the publishing so much easier.
So much easier.
Right? Like, I mean, you just email things off. You're not dealing with big bulky packages and transit and all that. And, when it's on paper, they got to take pictures of everything.
Yeah, the idea that you can have the letterer and the colorist working on it at the same time is an incredible jump forward.
And that's
the letterer and the inker and the colorist can all be kind of working on it. So.
But you do them all, so is that like you with both hands?
Yeah, and it doesn't help at all.
I really do like. I found that. So just to go all the way, let's circle all the way back. You wrote, drew, and lettered this.
And lettered, yeah.
You were 20 years old?
Yeah.
and this was your first comic book.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'd done that was more than a page at a time. So I was thrown in the deep end for sure. It was.
It's.
You never know.
Did you ask to do that, or did they make you do that, or did they not know that you were doing that?
They didn't. I mean, they didn't make me. I think that if I wanted to, I could have asked for a letterer or something. But I was. But I think I had done a pretty elaborate sort of pitch packet to them, and because they would shown some interest, and so I drew like 3 pages, and I lettered it, and I inked it, and I did everything, and so I think that they were kind of like, let's let them do it. That's just less for us to have to deal with. And I'm like, all right, like you're putting your hands, you're putting your life in the hands of like a very young, very inexperienced, and not very good artist. So good luck.
I mean, I'm not joking. It's one of the things I absolutely cherished as a teenager, like buying comic books. I actually loved the story, and was like, the plot of this is that the Chainsaw Vigilante stops he hates superheroes, and in issue 1 he beats every superhero up in the city so that they'll quit fighting crime, and he thinks he won, and then the city is overtaken by this giant naked man who who he's a dwarf who has cancer, but the cancer just makes him gigantic. And
Which is pretty.
You see what I'm saying, Eric?
tone-deaf.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is a FOMO squad book if ever there was one.
So the funny thing is, okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, then you get to the third issue where the Chainsaw Vigilante kind of is rallying the superheroes to fight this guy, but he figures out something important, and the book is over. Like, you were 20 years old, and they canceled the book. Like, it doesn't finish. You kind of see where it's going.
Yeah.
But it was like, God, they couldn't give you a backup in something. You know, it was.
I think that they maybe gave me the opportunity, like years later when I was doing other stuff, to maybe like finish it off in like. I think they did say, "Can you finish it in six pages?" And I was like,
pages.
Now I would have said, "Of course, yeah, absolutely,
right,
yeah."
Pay me 6 pages.
Yeah. But I was like, no, of course not. No, it's are you kidding me? This is my masterpiece.
It's the Chainsaw Vigilante.
Yeah. Like I should have seen the writing on the wall and just been like, yeah, sure, whatever. But I thought, I don't know what I thought. I just was like, no, I could never do such a thing.
Can't rush perfection.
Yeah. And the Chainsaw Vigilante demands nothing less.
It is the first foil black and white comic, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
first.
like
the thing is that unironically we are 4 people that agree with you that like it's something that you care about. It's something that you worked on. It was, I'm imagining, formative for like you and your career.
Sure.
Like you deserve to end it the way
That was my first child.
Yeah, but yeah, in retrospect, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. So one of the funny things is I feel like that comic, ironically, my very first comic was the one that gave me that sort of like the red badge of courage of being a cartoonist, which is that something that I did for a page rate on a work for hire book ended up in a, tens of millions of dollar movie. And the Tick TV show on Amazon with Peter Serafinowicz as the Tick had the VLM. I didn't name him anything, but he was called the Very Large Man. The giant naked man was in the Tick TV show, and it's like, and I was watching the show and I'm like, huh. Let me just look at dessert. Did I miss a check that came through? Nope, I sure didn't.
Even in the Tick cartoon, Dinosaur Neil, when he gets really big, I thought was kind of the same idea. And I was going to ask, because it does say something like, I mean, Ben England is credited, but was the story yours? Did you pitch that story?
Of
Chainsaw Vigilante.
Yeah. I did all that. Yeah, I did all that stuff. I don't know.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and I was doing it while I was in college, like while I was at a full course load. I don't know what the heck I was doing.
Turn in on all your papers the night before.
Oh yeah. I was definitely not doing my coursework. That is true. Yeah. I ended up, I did work on the Tick TV show, that animated Tick TV show.
Awesome.
Yeah. I worked on the season that was canceled. So I wrote some scripts and I just got a kill fee. And then back to Minnesota.
The Tick has never had luck. It's been a cartoon and 2 live actions, and they never take like I hope they will, and they've all been really excellent in their own way.
Totally. I mean, and and it's like, and it would be great if Ben would just make the comic, but he's a Hollywood. I mean, he's not a Hollywood guy, but he's a writer director.
Right.
Well, sort of like, sort of well integrated into Hollywood. There's no reason for him to go home and just start cranking out a comic book.
No, he changed his tact, and it for me really I love his art style. Like when he really hit his stride with the Tick. But yeah, I get it, man. He wants to tell stories a different way.
Yeah, and then you could tell. I mean, like you were saying, like that you could really tell that he really wanted to keep working on these pages, and that they were taking them away from him because they're like, we need this comic book to come out. And then finally he had the power to say, no, I'm going to keep working on it until they're perfect. And then they never came out.
Yeah. And issue 13, it doesn't exist.
It's a damn shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made it through my question list, and I didn't know if anybody else had any, or
we got
you know,
all of
or
mine
you guys.
in a roundabout way.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Hagen?
I mean, I think that it's fair to say that you are working in a field that, like, a lot of people have dreamed about working in, and maybe haven't had. You're working in a field that a lot of people have dreamed about working in. When did you have a, like, hey, look, Ma, I made it moment? Like, did you have was it getting your first check? Was it not being paid for your work being in an Amazon show? Like, what was your, hey, look, Ma,
That naked man was mine.
Yeah. There's a certain checkbox somewhere that I checked for that one. But I mean, I think even just getting that first call from a comic publisher that said, like, yeah, we're interested in having you do this. And I just was over the moon. You know, I mean, but I also think when Gene Ha suggested that I work with him on Top 10 with Alan Moore, that was also kind of a big deal. Like, first of all, there's going to be some money, and second of all, oh my God, you know, like, I get to call up Alan Moore and be like, hey, you know, I have a question about the script. Oh yeah, a couple other questions about this and a couple other questions about that.
I bet you had a lot of questions.
I did.
I'm not sure how to draw this. Can we talk about it?
Can you tell me anything about big numbers? But yeah, like, yeah, and it's like, and I mean, speaking of my parents, my mother is an artist, and she was always really supportive, and she thought that was really fantastic. Even though I think that she kind of was like, this doesn't seem to be, like, getting you any money. And, you know, up to a point, it was like, yeah, it doesn't. It really doesn't. But
no, it actually keeps me from making money.
Yeah.
Come to think of it.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's every once in a while there's things where it's like, you know, or one time I was at a party where people were doing sketches, and I drew one of my characters, and then so there's a character in The Replacement God, which is my 90s fantasy book, where he's kind of this guy with a big bushy beard. And I drew him. And then Sergio Aragones grew next to him, looking at this character and thinking a thought balloon that had a picture of Sergio in it because it was the big bushy mustache. And I was like, all right, well,
that's pretty
it's time
cool.
for bed. I think that we can call this a day. This is pretty
Wow.
great.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Well, I just had a closing thought. I was just thinking, you know, all the years of Kaiju and Hack and Chainsaw Vigilante and all the hard work you've put into all that stuff is made this what it is today. And you got to be proud of this because you had to go through all of that, you know, all the hours of drawing and writing, and it's got you this. It's a really good first issue. So.
Well, thank you so much. It is really fun to sort of, you know, people are like, oh, well, how'd you get the Image to sign off on it? It's like, I don't know, it really wasn't that hard because I did all of this up, you know, because I've been working in comics for 32 years, you know, like that like it got to that. I had done all this work that it was like, oh, okay, well, this. I thought
it was cool that you was talking. It was interesting that you was talking about how you couldn't have did this 20 years ago. You know, it wouldn't have been this good. That this is. It took all that to get to here. You know?
And I think that a lot of what it specifically wouldn't have been is this consistent. Like that's the nice thing about you know, age and experience is that you kind of go like, okay, you know, I don't know if I can draw it really any better than I could 25 years ago. In terms of like the best thing I drew back then and the best thing I can draw now are probably pretty close. But I can consistently do, you know, A- work all day long, every day without even breaking stride, you know, as opposed to be like 1 A+ illustration and then 14 C+ illustrations, you know. And so now, it's like I can pretty much be like consistently the same all the time, you know. Hopefully, good.
Very cool. Well, I mean, we've been going almost 2 hours at this point, so I want to respect your time, and I do want to say thank you so much. Again, like it's really cool for like, you know, even if you don't like want to create a comic book or be an artist or anything, we all love comics, and so just to get a peek behind the curtain of, you know, it's how the sausage is made, but it's not as gross.
It's almost not as gross, but actually it's pretty disgusting. Yeah, I mean, and I think that it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, like I have a lot of friends that I talk to who do want to be comic book artists, and I remember thinking to myself, it's like, I don't know if you really want that as a job. Like, it is an awesome hobby, but sometimes it's a really crummy job, you know, because there's like a million little things that you have to do that are not that fun, and like coloring somebody else's comic that's maybe not as good as you'd hope it would be, like that's just not fun. But like, but that's all I really wanted. Like, I love it so much that I am happy to do all that sort of stuff, as opposed to, I think that some people, and I think that there's nothing wrong with this, it's like they want to just draw their comics, and it's like, yeah, that's great. Don't leave your job. Like, have a job, and then you never have to worry about whether your comics are being read by anybody. You can just do the ones that you love, and I think that's totally awesome. Which is a long answer to a question you didn't ask.
I mean,
try digging ditches. No thanks. I actually really love this job.
Yeah. No, I have little baby office worker hands. I can't do it.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Oh, you know, I think it goes without saying, we had a great time tonight. You are welcome back anytime.
Oh, I love it. That would be great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come bother you at least once.
Yeah, we're gonna come bother you at the table at
Are you guys all gonna be there?
Yeah, we're all gonna be there.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're all gonna
raid your table.
Yeah.
All right.
We're all gonna come up, and we're all gonna have like frames around our faces so that you can recognize us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, little name right here.
Yeah, we'll be holding the White Claws.
Yeah. Okay, that actually will be really easy to spot.
Now, if you're staying at the Westin, after hours at the hot tub, Dope is actually signing White Claws.
Oh, they're signing out. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Hot tub signings.
Yeah, I'm staying up the road a ways, but yeah. But
he canceled his reservation while he was on stream with us.
But yeah, I mean, it's I do love the BarCon at this show. It's really fun to, I mean, especially on the night of the auction,
art auction.
Like everybody's there, you know.
Yeah. Very cool. I've never been. Hagen is the only one who's been there.
Oh yeah,
I'm looking forward to the after.
Oh yeah, you guys are gonna love.
You
guys are gonna love it. It's really, it's such a. I just the show floor is just so. Just I don't even know what the word would be. It just fills you with happiness, because you're just like, yeah, like everybody here is just like making comics and having a great time, and it's you know, I don't know. Nobody's
I hope
trying.
It smells like that 70s comic paper.
Yeah,
yeah.
Best part.
Right. It smells like Silver and Bronze Age has the best. The best.
Right. Right. These trees died for a reason. Absolutely.
So yeah, we're gonna do this again sometime. We'll definitely see you at Heroes. We will bother you again after a respectful time. I don't know. It's been a while since I dated. I don't know how long you're supposed to wait to text again, but you know, 3 days or so.
30 minutes, right?
30 minutes, I think it is. Yeah.
I heard 3.
Yeah.
I heard as soon as you close the door, you text and say, "Are you okay?"
Right. Did you make it home?
Thank you to everybody who watched. We had a lot of people in the chat today.
Yeah.
I tried to hit as many of them as we could, but this was fun. This was just a great hangout, man. So
Yeah.
Zander, thank you. Everybody go buy sleep. And as soon as I get off here, I'm going to order heck.
Yes.
But everybody, if you guys will all just hang out for a minute, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream.